Hello, lovely people. How are we all doing today? Welcome back to the RR Show, the place where we gather around, grab something nice to drink, and dive headfirst into the absolute circus that is the internet. I'm your host, Jane, and today we are officially on the clock. This episode is all about work stories, the kind that make you laugh, cry, and, well, just seriously question humanity. If you've ever worked in retail, hospitality, or anything that involves dealing with the general public, you'll know exactly the kind of stories I mean. These are the ones that stick with you long after your shift ends. Now, before we get into it, if you've got a story of your own that you would like to share, whether it's funny, awkward, or completely unhinged, you can send it our way at mystory@disturbed.com. We would genuinely love to read them. Now, we're kicking things off strong. Our first story comes from user AccomplishedGold4641, and if you've ever worked or even just spent time in a mall, you'll probably feel a sense of dread creeping in already. This one is not just a story. It provides what I can only describe as a sensory experience. So let's step into the bright lights of a mall kiosk and get straight into it. I used to sell cell phones in a mall kiosk, which really is all the context you need in order to understand the moral landscape of this story. Imagine a regular retail gig, but remove the walls, strip away any illusion of privacy, and drop yourself under fluorescent lighting that feels like it's quietly judging your life choices at all times. Then place that setup directly between a pretzel stand and a nail salon, so the air is a constantly rotating wheel of warm sugar, acetone, and despair. That was my workplace. That was my battlefield. It was there that I learned two deeply important truths about humanity. First, people absolutely do not read return policies. They don't skim them, not glance at them. They actively avoid them like they're written in an ancient curse. Second, entitled people often carry with them a very distinct aura. And that aura frequently smells like it is engaged in an ongoing rebellion against soap. I worked for a major cell phone carrier. I won't name which one, mostly because it doesn't really matter. They're all basically the same multi-headed corporate hydra, just wearing slightly different polo shirts and pretending their shade of blue or red or whatever is revolutionary. We sold phones, plans, accessories, insurance, and perhaps most importantly, the fragile illusion that owning a newer device would somehow fix deeper, unrelated problems in people's lives. Now, our return policy was not subtle. It was printed on the receipt, it was posted on the wall, it was displayed on the counter mat, it lived on the website. If possible, it would have been tattooed onto customers' forearms upon purchase. 14 days. That was the window. The phone had to be like new condition, no damage, no water exposure. And while not explicitly stated in bold print, there was an unspoken clause: no biohazards. You'd think that last part would be common sense. It was not. Enter Rick and Denise. I don't know their real names, but Rick and Denise feels cosmically accurate. Rick was loud in that very specific way that suggests he believes volume can substitute for logic. Denise, on the other hand, was quieter but much sharper, focused, like a knife that had developed opinions about customer service. I actually smelled them before I saw them. It hit me about 3 seconds in advance, drifting through the open-air kiosk like a warning signal. It was the kind of odor that makes you briefly consider whether or not you're having a stroke. It was layered, complex, sweet, sour, damp, like something had gone wrong in multiple stages. Imagine a bouquet, if the bouquet was left in a hot car with gym shoes and unresolved anger. It was less a smell and more an experience. Rick approached first and slammed a phone box onto the counter. Not placed, oh no, slammed. This wasn't just an action, it was a declaration of intent. We're returning this, he said, already irritated by my presence. I put on my customer service smile, the one that exists somewhere between hostage negotiator and overworked therapist. Sure thing, I said. What seems to be the issue? Denise leaned in slightly and the smell intensified in a way that made my eyes water. "It doesn't work," she said. I asked what specifically wasn't working. She gestured vaguely, like she was indicating all of existence. It just doesn't. The phone itself was a flagship model, expensive, sleek, and currently sticky. That's the word I'm going with. Sticky in a way that suggested this device had lived a life. I instinctively reached for gloves. This was not policy, just survival. Rick noticed immediately. "What? You scared of germs?" he scoffed. "Sir, I am afraid of yours, specifically." I checked the purchase date, 28 days ago. I began, gently, to explain the return policy. "So, unfortunately, our return window is..." Rick cut me off before I could even finish the number. "That's ridiculous. We didn't even really use it." The phone looked like it had been used to butter toast, repeatedly. Denise crossed her arms. "No one told us that." I pointed to the sign. She glanced at it briefly, then looked back at me with the calm confidence of someone rejecting reality on principle. "Well, we didn't read that." And there it was, the core philosophy. If information is inconvenient, simply choose not to acknowledge it. Problem solved. I shifted tactics and started offering alternatives. Warranty options, insurance claims, manufacturer support. I spoke calmly, clearly, kindly, like someone trying to soothe a startled raccoon that had wandered into their kitchen. Rick grew louder. Denise grew colder, and somehow, impossibly, the smell seemed to grow stronger, as if it was feeding off the situation. It settled into the kiosk and it clung to the counter. It sank into the laminated surface like a curse. Rick leaned forward. "You're going to take this back." I explained again that I couldn't. He demanded a manager. I told him I was the manager on duty, but he demanded a real manager. So I called my district manager, because at this point I wanted a witness. Rick took the phone and proceeded to loudly explain, for the benefit of the entire mall, that customer service was dead, young people were lazy, and society was collapsing, apparently all because of a 14-day return policy. My district manager backed me up. Policy is policy. Rick handed the phone back to me like it had personally offended him. "Fine," he said, "then give us a new one." I simply said, "No." Denise let out a long, dramatic sigh. "This is unbelievable. We spend so much money here." "You do not," I thought. "You bought one phone and an off-brand charger you tried to return last year that smelled faintly like soup." Eventually, they left. Not quietly or gracefully, they left in a storm of indignation. The smell did not leave. I wiped the counter, then I wiped it again. The disinfectant tried its best, but this was a battle it was not equipped to win. My coworker gagged. The pretzel stand guy leaned over and asked if we were having plumbing issues. I assumed that was the end of it, but I was wrong. 2 days later, Rick returned. Alone. Confident. Carrying a plastic grocery bag. The moment I saw that bag, my soul left my body briefly and then returned with a migraine. He sat the bag on the counter and said, "I talked to corporate." This was a lie, but I allowed the performance to continue. He reached into the bag and pulled out the phone. It was wet. Not water wet, not oops, I spilled something wet. Damp. Deeply, spiritually damp, like it had been stored in a basement that had unresolved emotional issues. And the smell, somehow worse, more intentional, like it had evolved, like it knew my name. "I want a refund," Rick said. I asked why the phone was wet. "That's none of your business." Unfortunately, and not by choice, it was entirely my business. I explained, again, that the return window had passed and that the phone was now clearly damaged. He claimed that it had been like that when he bought it. We made eye contact. For a brief moment, reality tried to reinsert itself between us, and completely failed. Rick raised his voice again. People started watching. The nail salon paused mid-acrylic. Even without Denise present, her essence lingered in the air like a warning. In a calm, professional way, I refused. Rick threatened to call the police. I encouraged him to do so, mostly because I wanted a third party to experience this odor and validate my suffering. Unfortunately, he did not call the police. Instead, he shoved the phone back into the bag and stormed off. Again. And again, the smell stayed behind like an unpaid bill. A week later, corporate contacted us about a complaint. Rick had written what could only be described as a novel. According to him, I was rude, discriminatory, and had refused service based on his appearance. This was fascinating, because I had never mentioned his appearance. Smell, in my opinion, exists on a different plane. It's not visual, it's atmospheric, a presence. Corporate asked for details, and I provided everything. Timestamps, policy references. I even had photos of the phone, taken with gloves and a heavy sense of regret. My district manager also added notes. As it turned out, Rick was a repeat offender. He had attempted similar returns at multiple locations. One note in his file simply read, "Odor issues." Corporate sided with us, policy upheld, Rick was flagged and restricted from making returns at our location. They sent him a polite professional email explaining the situation. Denise replied, in all caps, several paragraphs. Corporate did not respond. And then, about a month later, came the final act. Rick and Denise returned together. They approached the kiosk and I mentally prepared myself. Rick opened his mouth, clearly ready to begin another performance. However, Denise stopped him. She paused, sniffed the air, frowned. And then, with quiet finality, she said, "We're not buying anything here." And they left. Just like that. The air almost immediately improved. It was like someone had lifted a curse. I felt 10 years younger. I haven't seen them since. But I still think about them sometimes, about how entitlement rots things, not just policies, but spaces. How refusing to read rules does not make you special, it just makes you loud. And how some smells are not just physical, but philosophical. I don't work in cell phone sales anymore. My sense of smell has mostly recovered, though I suspect it may never fully trust me again. The experience really has stuck with me. These days, I always read return policies carefully, thoroughly, religiously. And I shower daily. Because living in a shared society is, at its core, a collective agreement. And soap is part of that agreement. I honestly don't have words. I can barely bring myself to send back food when it's wrong. I cannot fathom being entitled enough to try to return a sticky phone. It's mental. I have so many questions, but unfortunately, we don't have time for them right now. Our next story is from Emerald_Encrusted. And in this one, we've got a different kind of problem, as well as a very important lesson. Sometimes we don't need to spend hundreds of dollars trying to fix software issues. Sometimes the solution is actually a lot simpler and completely free. So if you enjoy saving money and avoiding unnecessary embarrassment, you'll want to stick around for this one. We'll be right back after a short ad break. So this happened a little over 5 years ago, back when I was working in tech sales for a big retail company. We sold everything: phones, laptops, TVs, kitchen appliances. You get the idea. I was technically on the sales floor, not in tech support. But when things got quiet, I'd occasionally hop over to the support counter and help out when needed. Now, one of my coworkers, let's call him Nazim, was an absolute machine when it came to sales. He was the kind of guy who could sell you something you didn't even know existed, and somehow convince you that you needed 2 of them. He was also from a pretty wealthy family, but very much the rich but technologically illiterate stereotype. One slow afternoon, I'm covering the tech support counter when I see Nazim walking in with his mom, dad, and younger sister. They all looked a bit stressed, like they'd just come from a long and frustrating errand. Nazim walks up and goes, "Hey Emerald, I need your help. We've got a situation." So I'm like, "Okay, what's going on?" He gestures towards his sister. "It's her phone. The camera's messed up. It takes terrible pictures. We thought it was broken, so we already got it repaired. But it's still not working." That gets my attention. "Okay, what kind of repair did you do?" He sighs. "We took it to another shop, one of those officially licensed places. They replaced the camera. Cost us about $220. At this point, I'm trying to stay professional. But internally, I'm thinking, okay, this is either something very weird or very simple. I say, all right, let's not assume anything yet. Can you show me what the issue looks like? His sister steps forward, unlocks her phone and says, yeah, here, look. She points it up at the ceiling and takes a photo. She hands it to me and, yeah, it looked rough. The lights are all blurry, kind of smeared. Definitely not what you'd expect from an iPhone camera. I nod. Okay, that's not great. Does it do the same thing on the front camera? She switches to selfie mode, snaps a picture and shows me. Totally normal. Crisp, clear, exactly what you'd expect. I said, mind if I take a look? She hands me the phone. I flip it over and glance at the rear camera. Then I casually take the hem of my shirt and I wipe the lens. Then I hand it back and told her to give it another go. She takes another picture of the same ceiling, looks at the screen, pauses. Oh my God, it's fixed. Everyone leans in to look. The picture is perfect. Sharp, clear, exactly how it should be. And then there's just this moment of silence. Then her mom goes, slowly, wait, you're telling me we spent $220 replacing the camera when it just needed to be cleaned? I'm doing everything in my power not to laugh. Nazim just puts his hand on his forehead and goes, oh, for fuck's sake. And honestly, I didn't even have a witty response. What do you say to that? But I'll tell you this, that moment has stuck with me ever since. Because in tech, people always assume the worst case scenario. Something must be broken. It must be expensive. It must be complicated. And sometimes, you just need to wipe the lens. And there we have it, a gentle reminder that not every technical issue is actually technical. Sometimes it just needs a quick clean. Now, our next story is from spicy_disaster35, and it's a little bit different. This one isn't actually about being at work. It's about the very special experience of being mistaken for an employee, while you're just trying to mind your own business and negotiate with an irate self-checkout machine. So yesterday I went to CVS, which is always a mistake because I somehow get trapped in the makeup aisle time vortex. I went in for one thing and next thing I know, it's been 40 minutes and I'm emotionally invested in comparing 5 nearly identical shades of lip gloss. Eventually, I checked the time and realised I had to be somewhere. So I panic-snapped back to reality and speed ran through the rest of the store. I grabbed some snacks like I was on a game show and then headed straight to the self-checkout. Because of course there were no employees around, not a single soul. Now, an important detail to know, I was wearing bright purple scrubs. My job requires it. I did not think that would matter, but it did. So I'm at the self-checkout right by the entrance, scanning my stuff, when the machine starts absolutely screaming at me at full volume. Please place item in bagging area. Not once, not twice, repeatedly, aggressively, like I'm being publicly scolded by a robot. At that exact moment, a woman walks through the front doors and the anti-theft alarms start blaring too. I'm already stressed trying to bag mascara like it's a bomb I need to defuse, but now it's a full symphony of chaos. Beeping, yelling, flashing lights. We made eye contact and I give her that awkward little, haha, wow, this is loud and weird smile. She does not smile back. She just stares at me, frozen. Then she asks, completely seriously, am I allowed to come in? And I'm standing there, in purple scrubs, mid-checkout meltdown, holding snacks and mascara, thinking, why are you asking me? I looked around, convinced that all the chaos would miraculously make an actual employee appear, but that was not the case. I looked back at the woman. She was still staring at me expectantly, so I said, I think so? She steps closer, probably because neither of us can hear anything over all the chaos, and asks again, so I can come in, right? At this point, I just wave her in like I own the place. Like, yes, welcome, come on in, CVS is open, enjoy the alarms. And that's how I accidentally became an unofficial bouncer of CVS. Still never saw a single employee. And that is how you accidentally get promoted to CVS management without so much as a name badge. Right, I've got one more story for you, and this one takes a slightly different turn. Think small town chaos, questionable decision making, and a crime that feels oddly specific. So if you thought things couldn't get any stranger, just wait. We'll be right back after a short ad break. This literally just happened tonight, and I'm still processing it. For context, I live in a small town in Tennessee. One of those places that's half rural, half... We have a shopping centre, and that's basically a city. I work at a commercial bookstore, and weirdly enough, the most commonly sold item that we deal with isn't what you think it would be. It's not notebooks or bestsellers, it's Bibles. Yeah, of all things. Anyway, it's Sunday and it's dead. Like so quiet I'm considering reorganizing bookmarks for entertainment. I'm at the register when my boss radios and goes, "Hey, we've got some people acting weird in the Bible section." Never a great sentence to hear. He says they're flipping through books as well as pulling out anti-theft tags and just dropping them on the floor. Not even trying to hide it. Just casually creating a little pile of evidence like it's part of the decor. So one of my coworkers, let's call him Jeff, goes over to handle it. Jeff is pretty big. He's an intimidating guy, the kind of person you send over when you want a situation to stop immediately. He tells them off and they back down. Then he heads to the back. My boss, meanwhile, had called the police, which is standard procedure in these kind of situations. But before the cops can even get there, these two, a girl and a guy, probably around 25, decide it's time to go. They grab about $100 worth of Bibles, stuff them into their shirts, which is a choice, and run out of the store. I sprint outside, thinking I could at least grab their license plate number. I could not grab their license plate number. They were out of the parking lot in about 15 seconds flat. Just gone, like they trained for this moment specifically. The cops show up not long after. We fill out a report, and I give them the best description I can. I tell the officer about the car. Looked like a newer model, had those distinctive bar-style headlights, like one continuous strip across the front. He nods like that's helpful and gives my boss his card. And that's that. We close up for the night. I'm pretty annoyed at myself for missing the license plate, but whatever, I figured it was over. Now here's where things get a little bit ridiculous. As I'm leaving, I notice a car not even 100 feet away from our parking lot. Same exact style of the headlights. And I'm thinking, there's no way. I don't know what took over me, but I decided to follow them. Just for a minute or two. Not trying to be dramatic, just curious. They pull into a drive-in fast food place in the same shopping centre. I pull in too, park nearby, trying not to look like I'm absolutely investigating them. And yeah, it's them. Same blonde woman in a white sweater. Same guy in a black baseball cap and sweatshirt. Just casually sitting there like they didn't steal a stack of Bibles an hour ago. They hadn't even left the area. They had stayed in the same shopping centre for hours after the theft. No urgency, no attempt to disappear, just hanging out. At that point, I finally got my moment. I snap a picture of their license plate and send it to my manager. He forwards it to the police. So yeah, that's how my extremely boring Sunday turned into a weirdly dramatic Bible theft saga. My boss is planning to file charges, and honestly, I'm just amazed at the whole thing. Like, of all things to steal, and of all ways to handle it afterward, I really don't know what's stranger. The fact that people steal Bibles, or the fact that they stole them and then stuck around like they were waiting for a sequel. But that is all that we've got for you today, folks. I hope that you have enjoyed. I'm your host, jrice, and this has been The RR Show, a production of Evergreen Podcasts. Our producer is Declan Roars, and our sound engineer is Sean Rule Hoffman. If you enjoyed the show, we would absolutely love it if you would subscribe and leave us a review on whatever platform you get your podcasts. And if you have a story that you think we would like to include on the show, you could send it to us at mystory@disturbedpodcast.com. For more information about the show and for more great podcasts that you could listen to, please visit evergreenpodcast.com. And I will see you in the same place next week. Have a good one.